think I volunteer.
There you go. That's how Shooty Park was built. That was a cool way.
Yeah, but- Just gotta get my board back up here.
And then my nephew's got a board on there. A couple kids that I know have boards on there. It's cool because you see them all grown up now. When that thing came out, it was, so when I take the kids, I'm like, yeah, there's Uncle Mason's board. It's actually their cousin. Because Uncle Mason, because of the age difference, yeah.
Just did some repairs on it this last year.
Yeah, I saw you guys were up there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you guys ripped quite a bit out of there.
We did, well, those that, the parks department did a lot of the work. We just did the roofs.
The roofs.
Yeah, nobody wanted.
Okay.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna call our meeting to order. It's February 1st, 2023, 5:30, our executive committee meeting. It's at 5:32 right now. And we're gonna start by talking about, we've had on the schedule for a while, our governance model update, based on the book we were reading. And we talked last time a little bit about, now looking more at that structure. And one of the things that Jim and I have talked about is that it might be time to do a board retreat. Jim, you want to talk a little bit about that recommendation?
Yeah, I think it would be good here in terms of with some of the decisions we made, from restructuring, in terms of what we're carrying up with the new. We've talked about the potential of shifting our committee structure, to kind of match that and think through that. We've also identified how critical it is that we deal with what we've identified as a crisis relative to our reading scores, that this whole literacy, if not more, in terms of where we're looking at, maybe we need a reform model because it's bigger than just a component part. That with all that, I think getting through those decisions, it would be good to regroup, because we've made, we'll be completing some major decisions and now we have to talk about execution. How does this potential, how do we proceed with this, with many of these things starting next year, but, making sure we're making good use of this time, getting ready for next year. And it may just be meaningful to take a break to say, okay, let's regroup now. We just made these, what are those things? Are we going to move to a new committee structure for the board? Because before we start moving down there and planning, how are we going to work with the new administrative structure or team, to do this? I mean, already we're experiencing some things in terms of even concerning the next item policy, where we're 2 to 4 years behind, in terms of not knowing what's current, what's not been reviewed, and having to regroup that up. How are we going to proceed with that? And I think, in many ways, administration plays a key role here in providing you information to have an effective instruction. But how are we going to do that? How are we going to conduct our business? And so I think our retreat would just be really beneficial. And I was recommending to Stacy at the end of February or very first part of March, would be really a good thing to do. And we've also talked about what we've not done regarding onboarding new board members. And some of this, they're going to get their cue from, well, how do we conduct our business? So I think the timing, of this, trying to make the most out of this year, which has been more than a transition year, we're really taking on some work, that it would also be really good though to maybe finalize the governance structure, and how we work, with an administrative team, to now think about how do we prioritize this, how do we plan this, how do we execute this. So I think that, that timeout would be really good. A retreat is obviously you could go off campus. It's still a public meeting, so it's got to be open to the public. Boards have done things in different ways. Jamie and I have discussed, we could get a facilitator in this, but Jamie and I feel we've got so much that we understand, that we could help, too, with this. But I thought, this would be a good group to consider. Does that make sense? And if it does, let's advance it to the board and get schedules set in place and plan for it.
So I'll weigh in. So I'm not a very big proponent of these retreats. In fact, I don't like them at all. The reason is because it's, I guess where we're at right now, where we have this giant microscope on the board from certain people in our community, I think that it can be a very, it opens us up to issues that we just don't want. It also, as far as from, if you look at the open meetings law, it does talk about, having agendas that are clear, concise, and with purpose. Sometimes retreats tend to deviate from that. I know the ones in the past, it was very general. I didn't appreciate it. So, and then also as far as timing goes, there is an election that's coming up in April. Myself and Kathy very well could lose that election, and you could have two new individuals that would be sitting at this board. And, I think it would be unfair to disclude those individuals and the ideas that they would bring forward, or their thoughts that people elected them to pursue. So I guess in those regards, just trying to keep it as neutral and fair as possible. Yeah, I don't know if the timing on that would be something that I think is best, and I just don't like them in general. So
Let me offer a little clarity again in terms of where I'm coming from, which I think the board has already established publicly, is to keep the main thing the main thing.
Mhm.
So my driving force is you've made a lot of progress to zero in publicly, that our business, above all else, is student achievement. And so my focus is all around that. How do we continue to do? And I would think you wouldn't want to revisit the student achievement, our top priority, no matter if you have a board election or not. And yet it's getting yourself geared up so that every new board member that comes on recognizing the importance of this, in terms of how to move that down. But again, that could even take place here publicly. It's not, it's just a matter of, okay, there's big things here. Do we really have a clear understanding in terms of how we're working with administration to move these items, and to keep the board informed and, the governance structure itself?
Mhm.
What happens is taking enough time to get our arms around that and say, yeah, we like this, we studied this, let's do it.
I don't know, I don't have an issue with it. I know you didn't like the last one, but when we did a board retreat the last time, I didn't have any issues with it. I thought it was one of the first times we all came together actually and made some decisions as a whole board. So it's nice to have a different setting. Even the last time we were just in one of the conference rooms, just to even be in a different conference room would be fine with me. But sometimes it's nice to change that up a bit. Because that can change our seating and change how we relate to one another. So I certainly think that we have some big things to discuss, and I don't think we're going to get them all nailed down. It'd be good to have everybody's opinion. So if we did it as a retreat, like the whole retreat thing of the committees. So that's something we've been talking about. It's just would be nailing it down. I guess I just don't have an issue with it.
Okay.
I didn't participate in the last one, and I was pretty public about that. I still hold those same beliefs of that. I'm not in favor of them, and I probably would just choose not to participate. So,
See, I guess one of the things that really came out of that last one though is when our whole entire board, granted you weren't there, but that's when we said behavior was our priority with our superintendent at the time. And before that, we had been kind of divided, right, about the way we talked to one another. Stuff. I thought it was a good meeting.
Mhm.
So I see advantages to that too, to having one.
My feelings are that, for the most part, my goal would be for us to really look at that governance model as a group. Because even if we have 2 new board members, we're going to have 5 existing members, and to have a structure in place to be able to roll out and be very succinct about that. I think would be good going forward.
So I guess like, that being said, why couldn't that be just a meeting, or a agenda item on a meeting that, we all get the emails, we can all do the homework, we can all do the diligence of, okay, this is what we're proposing. We put our thoughts into it. I mean, some of these meetings, they're lengthy in discussion, where they have some good, solid, strong, rebuttals and, insight. And I guess I don't see the reason to, why something like that couldn't just be done in a meeting where what it is that you're deciding upon. You've have your thoughts that you're bringing forward, and you have discussion on it. I don't know that I would.
So like you're saying a special board meeting, but we would just as long as everybody knows that it's the length of it, it could be whatever it's gonna
Understandable,
be.
and
because
you could
it's
just
gonna
set it
have-
early.
Yeah.
You set that meeting as an early meeting. I didn't like the construct of those
Mhm.
retreats, that they didn't make me feel comfortable at all. And I steer clear of them because I don't like the way that they are constructed, and it just seems to be too much in the gray area. So that's why I don't want to participate in that. If it's something on an agenda item where we're talking a special meeting and we have specific, things that we're discussing, yeah, great. I'll be there. But it's just something like that, I just would not participate in.
Well, I mean, I don't know why it can't just be a extended board.
I
or
would,
special
I
board
would,
meeting.
I would move this, to capture some of your prior comments, in terms of, as I picked them up, in terms of, we used to have what thought we were operating was a structure of a regular board meeting, a special board meeting, where the special board meeting was kind of like a committee of the whole taking on a topic. And that's really what I'm suggesting.
Yeah.
But what's happening, it seems like our business has exploded into 2 regular meetings, and we could probably add a third. So it's trying to work us back into, having that clarity of purpose, why we're here,
Mhm.
and to create that focus and finish something. And we really haven't wrapped our arms around the structure about what's the best way for us to take on this work of raising student achievement levels. And then how to work with the administration on that. So I am looking at it no different than I think you are.
Right.
Right.
So
I
then
just hate, in some ways, time out, let's take and let's finish some stuff that we kind of put out there.
So let's propose doing a committee of the whole meeting.
Yeah, that's fine with me. It's just, I guess I'm just pretty particular about that. And, it's just standing on my own principles that I've always held, and that I have ran these things, the whole board retreat things. I've ran them up the flagpole to see how actually, legit they are. They do them in assemblies, they do them in other boards. I understand that. To me, it's just, I guess, more of a principle factor and it's a principle that I just don't want to waver on. So and I understand that this is normal, the way things are normally done, but to me, it just doesn't feel comfy, so I don't.
I'm thinking about back to the book. I wish I had it with me, but the chapter that it talks about where, we get together with the management team, right? And I guess that's what I'm thinking. That's what I look at this as is that annual meeting, to kind of discuss those things. So I think the purpose is good.
It would just still have to have that. I mean, it has to have clear, definitive agenda points.
Right. And the one would be is that we're going to hopefully at the end of that be able to make a decision about whether or not we want to adopt this new governance model, and going through, having a thorough discussion on, our role in governance, and how, now that we have the strategic plan and the objectives to move forward, how we can get, into those governance roles moving forward to help support implementation, rather than what we've had to do coming out of the gate, so to speak, to get to this point.
One thing we may want to think about too, if we do something like this, that our other board members have not had access to that book, or at least those chapters. So we would either need to share them, like they should be able to brush up on that too.
I think
At least,
everyone got that.
have you got?
Everybody's got
yeah.
it.
Oh,
Everybody's
got the
seen
book.
that.
Okay, I
Yeah.
guess it's just something.
That's what's
talking
happened
about
is
it.
it's like we kind of ran out of time. We really, we
Yeah.
really don't take it apart. We don't really talk, what does this mean?
Mhm.
Yeah,
You're guessing about how well it was digested by anybody, even though we went through a period of
That's
time
been
where
a
we all
lot.
shared.
Mhm.
And as time passes by, you start moving on and you start staying with what you've always done. And it's just a matter of continue to do what you've always done and continue to get the results that not to say that the traditional isn't good, it's just how we might have been approaching that. I'm not,
Right.
And I just
Um,
think now that we have approved the new structure, right? And that's going to be, again, I think that model coincides better with our restructuring than what we have now. And so how do we get on board as a board
You mean
with that?
the
as
new
well?
structures and, because we didn't put that those new committees and all that, so.
No, I'm talking
No.
about the restructure of our,
central office.
Central
office
office,
How we're-
okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so I mean, the timing is just right now to, let's make a decision on governance,
Right.
and I've been through, for example, some of the retreats, because sometimes you don't take time out, and really the transparency from my advantage point has helped me here, because what's come as criticism publicly has turned around to see a bigger opportunity. We shouldn't do a pilot. We should maybe consider across the district because of our needs, even though some are now wanting to think maybe we should go back to a pilot. It's caused us to think, what are we taking on? What are we trying to accomplish? And I think what we're trying to see is all ships rise, here, that we are really recognizing the importance of this. And to the extent that you don't want to make a mistake in going down a direction that doesn't get the return that you're expecting. But that means all hands on deck. And I think the governance model is just important. It's not to say that it isn't the traditional. But I'm trying to draw, what are the couple of things that I've said, keep the main thing, and so let's start getting rid of some of the distractions.
Yeah.
From doing that.
Well, I think,
Oh, God.
I was just gonna add, I think it's good that, even though I, maybe disagree with the fact of the pilot program, I think it's perfectly acceptable and great that, people are still challenging. We don't want to get in the habit of echo chambers and only listening to our narrative. We should always be challenging self and, structure, because that's how we're going to grow and be better.
Well, and that's
you got to
what-
poke the holes in it in order to find out what's going to leak out of it,
And what's happened is we've actually invested more, in terms of research. Probably you've done more research than you've done in a long time about any particular subject with the board's engagement.
Yeah.
Right.
And the public.
So
We have a lot
back
of
to the
holes in our
governance.
bucket.
What's that?
We have a lot of holes in our bucket. Yeah.
So I just have a question. Could we just throw it out here, could we have like a special meeting, and we schedule on the agenda governance model for the whole board? We have like maybe 2 sessions or 3 sessions that are obviously, they're dedicated just to that narrative, to that discussion, fully transparent, so the community, that the naysayers can come out and they can listen to it and they can hear the bad, the goods and the evils. And then it's fully, because I do agree with Colin's narrative. However, I don't even understand it done correctly, because I've never been at one, so I can't say no to it, but I can't say yes to it because I understand the optics of it probably don't seem that good. So I would say my question is, can we just break it into 2 or 3 3-hour or 2-hour meetings that are, is that possible? Obviously we understand the work needs to be done and we need to be together to do the work. So
It's possible.
Is
It's
that
just
possible?
a matter of, some people let's just do it, right? And spend the time and do it in one chunk.
I'm that way too as well.
Whereas other people would say, because I've done even strategic planning sessions where we're going to do X amount on this night and tomorrow we're going to come back and do this part and then, we're going to be done. So absolutely we can schedule it anyway.
Then now I don't know what it would be like for the retreat and how that would be structured. Probably be structured similar to 4-hour chunks or 3-hour
Correct.
chunks.
Right.
So essentially it would be the same thing, but it would make the people not have any ammunition saying that we're trying to have this special retreat. Like, I want this to be as open and honest. Like, if you're gonna keep on coming after us about saying that we have some motive, like, that's ridiculous when we see our achievement gap and how much we need to bring the achievement up. Like, that narrative is just, is weak. So like I'm saying, let's do it in front of everybody.
Well,
so they
Matt,
see it.
in the past, it just was, I mean, this was the agenda item that I decided, or the board retreat that I decided to not attend it was school board retreat, information, discussion, possible action, and that was pretty much the agenda item.
Sure.
And honestly, it's like, you know, and even in the disclosure and how that looked was, you could bring anything you wanted to the table and discuss at that retreat. And it just, you know, that was the way it was, you know.
Well, yeah, they got away with that in the past,
And it
but
was
we're
just-
not gonna get away with that.
But the thing
which
is,
I
it
don't
wasn't
wanna have
it
that
wasn't a
either.
get away with. It was actually, you know, according to I talked to, it was
It's
legit. It was just different than what I felt. You know
Double
what I mean?
standards
It's-
down.
Right. So, I mean, that being said, it is what it is. It's just not, you know, I don't think that
I
we should be
agree.
doing that. So,
Well, I'm gonna stick up for it here, you guys, having been at it, like, it was completely legit. Everything that was discussed was on the up and up. And it may have not have been worded the way that you guys liked, but it was a legitimate
I didn't
retreat that
complain
any-
about it.
but anyone could have attended that one too, so it was all done properly, and I don't have any guilt over having been part of it at all. I mean, I think that it was.
and that's not what I'm,
perfectly fine.
that's not what I'm trying to convey. I'm just conveying it's just not, you know, it's not something that I want, you know, I didn't like it the way that was constructed, so I didn't want to participate in that.
Yeah.
And I think that that's, you know,
So it
I made
sounds-
it very clear.
So it sounds like it's the feeling is let's get together with a specific mission, not that it would be a time to go over lots of different things and that it would be up in the air for topics, but that it would be very clear, goal oriented of what we're going to work on and what we want to accomplish.
Focus discussion.
I think we
Yeah.
can make that work very well in terms of a special meeting, whether that's it's a special meeting with part 1, part 2. You know, we can start, you know, trying to lay out some thoughts there in terms of,
So I'm gonna have Lori kind of get together some times for us to do that and to send out to all of us so we can get a date on the calendar so everyone can
Do
plan.
you want us to be proposing agenda items that we want to be, I mean, for this discussion? I mean, obviously just, or, you know, so that we have it, or we just strictly
Once-
sticking to the governance model?
One's important to me is the governance model. How are we going to work with administration, you know, to get work done?
But I think, like, Colin brings up a good point, though. If there are subjects that we feel as though we would be great to talk about as a whole board, and we can put that on as an agenda item. I see the distinction that you're making, where before you could bring up whatever you wanted to, but now we would actually put it on the agenda. It gives everyone on the board a chance to talk about it. I don't want to say issue, but it doesn't have to be an issue, something that they're holding on to that they need to have talked about. Does that make sense? It may not be an issue, it might be a good thing. I have no idea, but it gives everyone an opportunity. So like we don't have to include everything if we decide it's going to be too lengthy, but if people can throw some ideas out there, I don't see the harm in that.
Well, why
So-
don't we do this? Why don't we have set up the time, the date,
Mhm.
and then ask for topics for our to be covered, and that we will talk about those. Well, Mary, I already have it. That's not gonna work.
I think you'd almost have to say, we already have our topics.
Yeah.
But if there's a need for someone to have a discussion at the retreat or special meeting, whatever we're calling it, then it can be considered. Does that
I
make
mean,
sense?
You're the one calling the meeting, right? So technically, if they forward, you can just put it out there to the rest of the board that, hey, if you have a specific item that you want addressed at this, bring it forward.
I mean,
And
this is
then-
almost a little bit like unfinished business because you put some items out there and we
Yes.
find our way. not wanting to slip away from that because we haven't brought closure.
Right.
Right? And
Yeah,
and
I
we've
think that
teed up
that's-
some things, and so there could be other things out there.
Yeah.
My goal is continue to work to take us to a higher level of performance. You know, and that's really getting our arms around some things that I think are important for us to become as efficient and effective as possible.
Yeah, back to the governance model thing, I'm just gonna throw this out there now because I use that term a lot. I am uncomfortable with the new model. It takes me out of my comfort zone. But I see a need for it. I see the value in doing it. And I don't think that's necessarily bad being taken out of our comfort zone if we can be more effective. And even with our office restructure, it took a lot of people out of comfort zone.
Right.
We can go out
It's
of our
only
comfort
fitting.
zone too, yeah, to make sure that we're doing things better. You know, how many times have we said during the year, like, well, that's also X, not just this committee, you know, so I can see where we need some more crossover and bring policy back into it and those kinds of things. So I look forward to those discussions and how everyone wants to put that together.
Okay, so we'll see if we can get some dates thrown out. And then also ask for topics if there's anything there.
So just to, from what I understand, now we're talking about potentially, or we're talking about a special meeting.
Like a
A special
day-long
meeting,
kind of
you know,
deal.
and so we can call a special meeting and, you know, do you want this on the next board agenda, you know, to discuss this or under the president's report? I'm just trying to think about, you know, what's coming up here. I mean, we could start looking for dates. Do you want to bring everybody up to speed at the next board meeting? Even though you could be sending it out right away, do you want to have some discussion and plan to discuss it under the president's report?
I think it'd be good.
You know, I mean, just
Have
to, you know,
everyone
to
weigh in
clarify,
about doing it.
Yeah.
right? You know, so I mean, we can be putting this in motion, but also again, creating visibility to let the public know.
Yeah, and
What
then
you're
obviously if there's say there's a topic out there that people really want, they're like, why aren't you guys talking about this? You know, why is this not being brought up and addressed? Well, then this is an opportunity for them to hit up one of the board members that, you know, is here, and they can recommend and request that specific topic be brought into the discussion.
You know, and I think it goes back to, I think that there was an interest in terms of having the regular meeting and a special meeting, but all you saw was the regular meeting, you know, carrying over to 2 regular meetings and not having enough time where we should have 3, you know, so something isn't working here, you know, where we're really focused, right? Because we're working our way through. That's part of the reason. You know, you're questioning things, which is all good, but it's, you know, it's getting to that point, you know, in terms of, you know, what's our primary work? Are we prioritizing that and taking it on? And that's, I think we all want this, you know, it's how to get there, and particularly in a public way, because I think it is important. This is, you know, you discussed last year, we had a literacy problem, and yet it went nowhere. You know, in terms of the urgency behind that. It was just, we're gonna get to that when we get to it.
So let's put that on as an agenda item that we will talk about having a board, a
Special
special
meeting.
board meeting that will focus on specific.
You want that
Topics.
set under the president's report or a special, you know,
I
I'm
think
trying
it's
to figure
new
where-
business.
New business, okay,
Yeah.
so we'll put it under new business, and then you're already teed up for that. We already checked calendars to see what
Mhm.
availability might be, you know, in terms of, you know, whether or not we keep it, you know, this another day
Right.
or in place of.
Okay.
And then you mentioned onboarding new members. Do we talk about that then also, or, I mean, that is on a certain committee? How would we start? It's just something else we're lacking. Is that something,
That can be a topic that's
Topic?
brought into the discussion.
do we want to do that?
But see, I saw that part of governance.
Right.
Because governance, if
Yeah.
you know, remembering the book, you have a responsibility to onboard your board members.
Right,
Yeah.
that's what the governance committee does.
See, and that
Okay,
was all
gotcha.
about, you know, what's the work of the board? How are you going to go about it?
Mhm.
How are you going to bring new board members on?
Yeah.
You know,
Like-
really what you're thinking of continuity here in terms of
Right.
what you're attempting to
setting the stage for years to come on what's going to be most effective.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
I attended a conference too about that, so.
Mhm.
Cool. Yeah, okay. I don't know how helpful it was, but I did.
Okay, all right, so if you would remind us to put that, well, and
Well,
Lori's
Lori's
gonna
gonna capture,
listen.
that's
and
why I
do
wanted to,
everything.
you know,
Okay.
record the,
Thanks, Lori. Okay, so policy update. So one thing after we decided that we were going to move all those to committees, and you did such a good job of bringing yours to your committee, it dawned on me, well, and Jim brought it up too, is that, and Jamie, that typically the way this starts is it goes to someone on our administrative team and they make a recommendation to the board to do that.
Yeah.
So, what it sounds like, what I'm proposing would be a better model is that we have Jim divvy up those to people in his administrative team to look at them, offer recommendations, and then bring them to that committee.
respective committees.
Love the idea.
And also in a pacing way to the extent that, you know, we have now minimally recommended policies that most districts adopt.
Right.
You know, in some version of. Not that, you know, and so I would be looking at that list with my administrative team. What committees would we see, even though we're talking about potentially changing committees? We still would make the, you know,
We still can't wait months.
we can't wait months. We gotta
It's
start
silly
it
to-
and we have what we
It's
have.
silly to wait months, and it's a waste of time.
Right, so,
Yeah.
so I will look with my administrative team, you know, again, we have so many competing priorities.
Mhm.
You know, because of putting things in place that aren't in place and catching up where we're behind.
Right.
Whether or not it's student achievement or policy, so we do have to take this on. But it was like the last meeting, you know, my administrative team wasn't ready to help.
Mhm.
You know, let alone bring you pros and cons about a particular one, you know, from how we would see that, you know, to be able to add input to that, even though it's still what you have to process through as a board, because it's your policy.
Well, and for our sake, like we had a lull for the agenda items
Right.
for our last meeting, so it made sense to like start it. And
Yeah.
those were the two policies. So are we to continue doing that with those two policies? Do you want someone to look at that?
I think we
And
could start with those
Jamie?
two policies, you know, and we would look at it administrative
Still
for
look
the,
at them quick
yeah,
before
you know,
next
just
meeting?
because we started it, you know, to
Okay.
finish, you know, but I'll look for the rest of the list with my administrative team and we'll try to figure out, you know, obviously some group up because a policy might hit 3 categories, you know, it might be professional staff, support staff,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and the same policies applying just in terms of, you know, so we would go through that type of a grouping.
Mhm.
And then, you know, what's the respective traditional committee that we would bring that through? Is it finances, it's HR, you know, where we would do it? Some might fall into, you know, I mean, we could even start, another way to start with the executive committee is, you know, what's on, bylaws.
Mhm.
You know, as you're going through those two though, even making a note about which kind of groups they belong to, like
Right.
how it could kind of fall, might help us with determining the governance model in which kind of like
Oh, in terms of the older
Past
and new, based on
committees
what we're kind
might
of
want to
looking
be
at.
clustered together.
Yeah.
Although I know a lot of districts have actual policy committees too.
Mhm.
So it's just a thought, like if you start seeing two that are lined up quite often together,
Right.
it makes sense that that would be one of the.
Well, it's, you've had that
committees.
same discussion in terms of, you know, is this building facilities or is it finance or is it?
Yeah,
well,
that kind of
finance
thing.
touches everything, you know, quite
Right.
often people touch, you know, a lot of the things that you're talking about, but,
Yeah,
and I think that that's why that, you know, the governance structure, remember in the new model is you're working in silos, so you're missing the systems component.
Yeah.
How do these things fit together to drive your ultimate agenda of raising student achievement levels?
One other thing that creates buy-in, you know, by having, you know, administration,
Right,
kind of leading that discussion rather than following that discussion, they now feel part of the process instead of just being told what to do.
the other thing I liked about the model that was being proposed there, and it would be new for me too, the model suggested board members are no longer passive board members. They need to own the work more. So that's where they were suggesting what I thought you were working to try to accomplish.
Mhm.
You know, that when you're advancing something, you aren't just telling the administrator, okay, report out. You know,
No, I don't think that's true of our board.
Yeah,
It's passive.
yeah, well, but that's, the model then fits, you know, engagement, but it says it's an engagement where there's a team now. You are working more closely with the administrative team. Obviously, you expect the administrative team to bring information, you know, for that.
Well, and I love the idea of the two words, working with.
Yeah.
Right,
Right.
or together.
Right.
I mean, you know, just like you bring up SFA, I bring up ad hoc all the time,
Yeah.
but we had a meeting today.
Yeah.
And just thinking about like different things about, well, how do we get this done? Who do we take this to?
Mhm.
Right? Who's gonna take this over? And at what point? So when you're working with someone, you don't even have to ask those questions really, because you're all there.
Right.
You're all
That's-
deciding together.
Right.
Okay, so, you know, I will, check in with Jim about
Yeah.
getting it to the administrative team.
I
And our
will,
curriculum meeting is, by the way, not until February 23rd. Does that sound right? 23rd, something
so I
like
guess
that.
it's more
So
time,
if
we can, yeah.
you or Jamie
Yeah,
or
we've
somebody
got,
wants to
obviously,
look
we
at
know we've
those
got some major
policies.
decisions that administration's really wrapped up into, you know, right now. But it's important, we can't just let things slip behind further. We need to bring this current and, it's beneficial and meaningful for all of us, so.
Okay. All right, and then the last thing was just the boardroom technology update. I do have, Lori got a message from Brady that they are working with an alternate vendor to locate a specific rated cable that allows us to legally complete the upgrade. Once they have this, they will be coordinating with our district electrician to begin the installation process.
Okay, mine out of my thing, that I good to know.
Can you read that again?
Yes. They are working with an alternate vendor to locate a specific rated cable that allows us to legally complete the upgrade.
Is there gonna be, does this change the cost structure to the upgrade at all?
Yeah, cable.
Well, no, I mean, so now we have a different vendor. We have an alternate vendor.
I haven't
Is
heard
that
anything,
vendor
you know, that
pricing
nobody's
different?
brought to my attention any significant change from where they were at in terms of the estimates, still a reasonable manageable. If that were, I'd bring it to your attention. And so I will follow up on that, you know, to the extent of if there is something that I will make sure that you have that information.
Okay.
Yeah.
And legally, I mean, is there specific cables
I
that
don't know what he's talking about.
need to be?
Legally, what he's saying is the structure, the system that we're buying probably requires, it has its own specifications, so you just need to.
Oh, you would need to adhere to their requirements.
That's how I'm interpreting it.
It's like you need 220 for your stove. Like,
Right.
there's probably certain
Good
things you need to get.
Okay.
That's what I believe, was communicated.
Am I right on that?
Right, I
No,
guess
that's a
my-
good- yeah,
I
it's
guess
probably
my-
something like that.
I guess
Yeah,
my
that's all.
my only frustration is that I could have had someone in here to do this yesterday, I feel like. And now all we're doing is waiting on a cable that I can order on Amazon. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm a
It might not be
little,
Might not be that simple though. I mean, I don't know. I hope it's not that simple.
I was, you know, I was expecting that after break, it was gonna be done, you know, in honesty myself. Now, again, we're working on a number of different priorities, you know, right now. That was something, it was almost like we're just almost ready. The equipment arrived and I was thinking,
But you know, to Brady's defense, who I don't know, you know, versus Adam, I mean, he took that initiative to put this together,
Right.
and we were just sitting waiting on basically nothing for
Well,
months and months.
I mean, yeah, and
And so
I think
we're way further ahead.
the history though is too, that we asked for this a year ago, before the prior board.
well, I've been hearing
Yeah,
about this
more than
since
a
I
year.
came on
Yeah.
board, you know, in
And,
terms of
and,
frustration with
and it was, because of the supply chain issue.
And it was dollars too, they were
that-
asking a lot.
yeah.
we were much higher dollars when I think
Yeah.
some of the proposals that you were talking about before.
So, I mean, I think it would be helpful just to really understand what is this cable and how hard is it to get? Because, I mean, and I can touch base with Brady to ask him. I'm not, again, I don't think Brady wants to stall the process.
No, I
I'm
think he's
just
excited
like,
about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just think
It'll
there's
be an
something
achievement for him.
that just does not seem,
I think it would be good if you could talk to him, if he can explain it to you, and then you could just say that the president notes at the end of the meeting,
Oh, that's good.
an
Yeah.
update, because I think that's really, well, I mean, obviously, if you get a good enough explanation that it's, then you can explain it to the voters.
Public,
Why
yeah.
why it's not been done.
That's a great idea.
I think that's what,
I,
and I know
I,
you're
I
still.
would say along the same lines, just, to share a little bit in terms of, as I've, restructured, our operations and I have a new team, we, information systems, our tech person, right now it's Jessica
Mhm.
is part of that team because it's so critical to our functioning. That, and yet we're frustrated because we're seeing a lot of voids and holes in our because we don't have systems in place. And technology, you can easily see links with systems because that's what technology helps.
Yeah.
But would I be correct in saying after we've
It's
got
like
some,
putting your hands on.
well, as an
Put your hand on
example, in terms of some things that Jamie and I take for granted, we always like to be able to inform our principals and teachers before we're advancing some things. So nobody's surprised. They kind of understand what we're doing in our work. And so Jamie has the in focus, specifically to make sure our teachers are kept informed. And then we just find out, it might be going to all the parents.
Or at least some of the parents.
Just
And not
because
to
we,
the teachers.
even a simple thing like a listserv in terms of that we would think would,
Right.
I mean, they're small things, but they're
They add up.
they add up.
Yeah, they add up.
So there's a lot of work is just what I'm saying but we're going to do this.
okay, well, there's nothing else on our agenda. We want to make a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, all
I
in
had to look at the
favor?
clock.
I know.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries.
Fourth Bob.
My word, John's not gonna know what to think or do.
We're not talking because I'm not going to get
Do I
drunk.
have to do I have to schedule a meeting with you to see you today? Just because I was gone over his lunch hour.
But I was like, I think I told the story when I used to, sometimes I